I have been very fascinated and thought a lot about this topic of belonging versus othering over the past while. I did a BBC last month about othering, and I continue to think about it to the point that this might be a two-part series. It's just been unpacking in my mind. So I wanted to share there's some insights from the book that I was reading, Belonging Without Othering. I've only gotten about halfway through it. It's quite psychological, sociological, with a lot of terms that I don't understand. So I've only gotten so far, but I did get to the belonging part, and that's what I wanted to share some of it with you today. So the last time I talked about othering, and I've come to this conclusion that it is one of the most successful strategies of the self-centered thought and the self-grasping ignorance. We have been othering each other since beginningless time, marginalizing, demonizing, projecting onto each other in forms of individuals and groups, all kinds of negative qualities and falsities, to the point that we just wish to harm each other, cast each other out, whether it's cast them out of our country, cast them out of our city, cast them out of our family, cast them out of our hearts. And we're seeing this in real time right now. But when you investigate, as we've learned in the Dharma, and it's just getting more and more apparent, is that when we try to understand the causes of this painful human experience that's so antithetical to our good hearts, is that the self-grasping and the self-centered thought, the way that we erroneously, mistakenly conjure up who we think we are, sets the tone for this othering. That we believe that we are somehow self-arisen, existing from our own side, coming up from our own side, permanent, autonomous. And along with that comes this thinking that believes that we deserve, this I deserves to be entitled, cared for, indulged with all good things of the world. And whenever there is somebody who wants to engage with us that wants some of what we want in the world, the self-centered thought starts this ongoing crazy argument that somehow they don't deserve it, they haven't earned it, they're not worthy of it, and put them into the enemy category to the point where we really feel threatened by them. This is the source of all conflicts in our world, one of the major ones. And if you look at the disadvantages of the self-centered thought, you can see othering is like playing its cards on the whole list that we have in our Lam-Rim. And that the countermeasure of othering is belonging. But it's not that simple to practice or cultivate, because the self-grasping ignorance and the self-centered thought actually can hijack this. And that's also playing in real time and causes and creates a whole lot of misery. Because we still have to deal, even in the belonging paradigm, we still have to deal with this self-important, self-preoccupied, self-defense, self-protection that comes up because of this grasping at this inherently existent self, that even with this beautiful, virtuous intention of belonging, it gets in there and sometimes makes things really, really difficult. Even as we try to cultivate in our groups this mind of belonging for others and for ourselves. So I'll talk about the basic definition of belonging and some of the criteria that the world's sociologists and psychologists say, and they resonate kind of like Dharma values and nonviolent communication values. They're important. But once again, definitions leave a lot to be desired. So sociologists define belonging as the satisfaction of an individual's need to be personally involved with their environment and to feel part of a larger social entity. They truly, through all the data that they've done over the decades, I don't know how long, this has been a somewhat recent phenomena of giving it a label, is that they have really come to understand that it is a fundamental and essential part of our physical and mental health as a human family, that is central to the success and the harmony of societies in general, and it's really necessary for the human family to be able to be nourished and to grow and to sustain itself. That this paradigm, this relationship called belonging, is crucial to our survival. It confers it's so deep. It's so deep, and it's got all the four measurables and it's got all the dharma in it. It confers full and unconditioned membership to everybody who wishes to join a group. And when you think about how many millions of groups we have on this planet, the opportunity to interface, engage, belong, get cast out, get disowned is just millions. But to be able to join a group where you share the same values, you share the same visions, the same goals, all the opportunities, not only welcoming people, and I keep thinking about the Abbey as I'm thinking about this over the past few weeks, but we empower each other to have a stake in how that group evolves, how it grows, and to fully participate and hopefully to be able to co-create or even inform the culture of that group, to be able to influence it in a beneficial way. And and by our very presence, the group is enhanced, the group is nourished, the group is sustained in a very, very beneficial way. And it may entail, as we participate in these groups in our lives and in the community here, we may have to reframe the vision. We may have to revisit the mission. They may have to revise the guiding principles. Belonging asks this of the person who steps into the group and of the entity or the group in which they are coming to belong. It helps to shape the organization, the community, the family. And in return, the person who has this sense of belonging will reciprocate with a deep sense of warmth and connection, kindness, and participation. So in America, we have made a really concerted effort to bring belonging, this concept of the big tent, into our legislature over the years. I mean, the Civil Rights Act was one of the greatest things that ever happened to this country, in that it really banned several forms of discrimination, and that years later, about 9 years later, Title IX was updated into the Civil Rights, which prohibited sex-based discrimination in any school or educational organization that gets funded by the government. So this Title IX and the Civil Rights Act really tried to give everybody an equal opportunity, regardless of race, gender, whatever exceptions we were making to exclude people. So this was one of the most, I think, noble endeavors of our country back in the 60s to be able to do this. And then along on the back of that, a few years later, we had affirmative action. We have the DEI, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Framework, which is really a belonging in a more objective way that gives everybody an equal chance. Now, the self-centered thought and the self-grasping ignorance, and many of our minds don't like this idea, and it's kind of become a flashpoint in our political conversation lately, accusing candidates of having special favoritism because of their race, reverse discrimination, thinking that intelligent minorities are getting chosen over the larger minority that are not benefiting. I mean, there's a lot of misunderstanding because the self-centered thought gets scared when it thinks it has to share power, that it has to share abundance, it has to engage in love and compassion. It just freaks out. So it's not so easy for humans to get this sense of belonging and to cultivate it gladly and happily and sincerely. So there are some criteria for belonging. They've got 4 major points, and I kind of put a little bit of dharma in here, and this is kind of as far as I'll get today. So the first criteria for really belonging encompasses and requires inclusion and equity. They're not synonymous with belonging. Equity generally is understood in regards to material things, perks, benefits. So if you go into a group, the equity provides that you're going to be able to get some of the same advantages more monetarily or economically. Inclusion, so that there's no disparity, that everybody has, once again, the same perks. Inclusion works more with the law, in that this is the way we need to be doing things because of the diversity, the need to include everybody. But it's limited in that you've got a law that you're trying to work under, but it doesn't necessarily ensure that the minds of the people who are trying to follow that law are up and running. The first women at Yale were not exactly hugged and welcomed openly by this extremely exclusive college for a number of years. The first women at Yale, let's say the first black police captain, was everybody in the police force open and willing and I can't wait for you to join? I mean, the law says you're welcome here, but I'm not sure I'm ready for this. Or the first trans legislator, there's a young one in Montana, and she's had nothing but pushback being in the state legislature. So the laws are helpful, but the minds of the people involved in implementing those rules, many times they're not ready for the inclusion. So it's one of the criteria, even though it's limited, it's a very important criteria for belonging. The second one is a sense of connection. This is about relationship. This is about the bond between those that join and those that welcome. And for me, the first one I thought more about equanimity, this level playing field for everybody, which inclusion, equity. I put them on the same plate, this level playing field. The second one, this sense of connection, is that all beings want to be happy and not suffer, and that this sense of bonding, this sense of warmth, fondness, and safety, that all people deserve to be happy and not suffer. The third one requires visibility and recognition, the experience of being seen. And sociologists say this is an extremely powerful feeling between people when they feel valued, when they feel respected. So for me, I translated that somewhat into integrity and the consideration for others. We hold our ethical conduct, whether we're the group in which people are joining or I'm entering into a group, is that I hold my ethical conduct. I think about my impact on others and how I can bring them into my heart. So I think that those two virtuous qualities line up for me on this whole idea about the sense of being seen, the experience of visibility and recognition. And that if people don't feel that they're represented in the group because they're invisible, belonging isn't going to happen. What happens in these four characteristics is that if one of them is missing, belonging becomes a little bit harder to cultivate. And then the fourth one is co-creating as far as the group's culture, the vision, the principles, the ability to influence the group in a virtuous, helpful way. Now the caveat, they were very clear about it doesn't mean when you join a group you get what you want. That the group automatically says whatever you want, we'll change the rules, we'll change the guidelines, we'll change the schedule, But to be able to have your voice heard, your input welcomed, is a very crucial part of belonging, with not a lot of, this pushback about your voice doesn't matter. And that the group works in harmony so that everyone has these four conditions. So there's an interdependence in this fourth criteria. So the institutions are made up of sentient beings. Everybody's got different kinds of views. We have our own minds. So whatever the group wants to implement, it's crucial that as many of the members of the group get a chance to agree on what's happening. So, and demagogues and autocrats and dictators use this deep need to belong. This is the danger of this beautiful kind of invitation, is that it manipulates people's fears. It manipulates and the pain they may have suffered from a harm or perceived harm, that builds and secures their power within this belonging group. They offer a place. They offer a home, and we hear that many, many times about these young radicalized men, is that they felt that they were being heard, that they were part of something bigger, that they belonged to this movement or whatever it was. And that they intentionally construct these movements and this sense of belonging. You're home, you're with people that think like you, look like you, believe like you. And it becomes a source of power for that person whose self-grasping and self-centeredness is so intentionally producing the circumstances to stay and maintain power. And that the need is so deep, and the loneliness and the lack of feeling like you belong in a society propels a lot of people to go to these places where they get moved right in there, and then they don't, none of the qualities, the criteria for belonging are there, except that it meets this longing to be part of something bigger than yourself. And so this is what's playing itself out right now, and this is more of what society does. What I want to do in the next BBC is, how do we deal with the demagogue and the dictator within our own minds? How do we deal with when we can't stand somebody, when we have ill will and malice towards whoever? And how does the Dharma help us to move through that, through some very, very powerful tools? So I just wanted to present how society deals with othering, how belonging functions, and Dharma. I'm working on my own mind that has had a dictator, and some of the tools that the Dharma affords for us to be able to work through our own hatred, our own ill will and malice. On the next one.
It seems to me, well, first of all, the whole thing of equity. In a group, everybody is not equal.
Equity is more the material possession, as far as just what you paid, what your experience.
Yeah, but even in terms of material things, not everybody that is equal. All Buddhists who go to a certain Dharma center, a certain temple, are not equal. All citizens of a certain state are not equal. And it seems to me also that groups, you can belong to a group, and the group will teach you to other people. Yeah, so the group does the whole process,
Right,
of othering other groups and other people, which the people who belong to the group are saying, but we have diversity, we have DEI here in this group. But the minds don't really
right, and that's one of the shortcomings of the societal, which is why I'm struggling with this book, is that they're laying out these fairly general rules on what they say equity is, what they say inclusion is. And I'm having to work with my own mind around what I think there's a bigger, deeper mindset going on here that I want to understand. And the fact that in the middle of belonging, that othering is a major byproduct of this deep wish to belong, and then things go off the rails because, right, and there are situations in our life where we have belonged to an organization, a church, whatever, and its vision statement and its mission statement and its principles, due to the change in the group, slowly, it starts to be where I have to unbelong myself because it no longer is what my values are. And we've also seen this where one or two powerful people come in wanting to belong, and slowly the whole thing just changes its whole ideology. And people with their own integrity say, the people stepping away from a particular political party, I can't do this anymore. I don't belong here. And I am going to unbelong myself because I have to keep my integrity, to keep my honesty, to keep my ethics. So this is not a simple thing.
Also, depending on the group, there's things that you have to conform to that may be beneficial for the group or for the individual, but some things that you don't think are so beneficial, but to maintain your belonging in a group, you have to yourself unbelong personally, not the group, others, know. So I don't know, this whole thing of belonging, I don't know. I have to think some more about it. Something's not totally right about it.
Yeah, there are certainly
Yeah.
limitations to what I'm
And
understanding.
and you have to give up certain things to belong to certain groups. Some of those things you have to give up, you realize are good for you, but some of them, maybe you feel that what the group isn't doing is right, but you have to go along with it in order to belong.
And that's probably why we have so much societal isolation right now, because we're all confused about what we're willing to give up to belong and what are we unwilling to give up to belong. And I think there's a lot of confusion about where we belong. And not in a bad way, but I think it certainly has just the criteria just keeps changing. And people's minds, I mean, yeah, the book has not resolved anything for me, Venerable.
Okay.
But these are the questions that have come up. And what is belonging about? I mean, if we're going to generate bodhicitta, which is the second part of my talk, we're going to talk about how do I deal with when I have a mind regarding something I can't stand? And how do I move through my casting people out of my heart? And how do I mean, the first cause for bodhicitta, one of the main ones is love. That's a tall order for me when I can't stand somebody. But if I go to the idea that it also means non-hatred, I think I got some space. And that's what I want to talk about in the next BBC.